So a really warm welcome. Hi everyone. A couple of you know, and a couple I'm probably meeting for the first time. I'm Laura Ryan, Chair of Meet Business Women, and totally delighted to be introducing you to today's session. The good news is you'll only hear from me for a couple of minutes, and Nicky's going to do all the intelligent stuff in a moment, and we're really lucky to have her here with us today. So before I talk to you about what today's session is going to bring and how you can be a great mentee, I just want to say a huge thank you to our strategic partners. Meet Business Women is in a bit of a new era, really. At the beginning of this year, we committed with the businesses that you can see on the screen there to work hand in hand with them to attract and retain more female talent into the meat industry. So some of you folks may work for these organisations, and if you don't, that's totally fine too. Everyone is most welcome, and today's session is open to anyone. So we're really delighted to have everyone engaged. And as Nicky says, we're recording the session so we can put it on the website. So if any of your colleagues are interested to watch this back, then they're more than welcome, and we'd love to get more folks involved. In terms of Meet Business Women, one of the huge areas for us, and we've heard from our community for the last 3 years, is around mentoring and the fact that we feel that we wanted some sort of mentoring, but we weren't quite sure how to deliver it. So in February, we launched this mentoring portal on our website. So if you are a member of Meet Business Women, you'll have seen the mentoring tab, and I know a couple of the names on the screen are already using the mentoring portal, which is absolutely fantastic. But what I've noticed speaking to some of our members in our community, they're a bit apprehensive, really, and totally understandably, about, well, what does it bring and what's it going to mean, and how do I operate as a good mentee? And exactly the same for the mentors. We had a session on Tuesday about how to be a great mentor, and we had over 60 people on that, which was great to understand how they can be better arming the talent we've got in our industry. So if you aren't using the mentoring platform yet, please do. And if you are, please give us feedback, because this is a trial for us this year, and we'd love to know what's working well and what's not working well. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Nicky Taylor. Nicky Taylor from Moy Park is with us, and she's going to be delivering this session, and she's built her career in the agri-food industry and enjoys a dynamic, fast-paced and continually evolving environment that this provides. She's head of talent and employee experience at Moy and has a passionate advocate of supporting people, teams and organisations at their best. And Nicky's a huge support to Meet Business Women, so we're hugely grateful to have her with us today. Nicky, before I hand over to you, Joan, you've got your hand up. Tell us if you've got a question. Maybe not. If you've got a question, feel free to type it in the chat, and then we'll come back to it at the end of the session. So Nicky, I think that is over to you, if that's okay, and you can tell us all, including myself, how can I be a great mentee?
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you so much, and a very, very warm welcome to everybody this morning. So in terms of what we're going to cover in this session, we're going to give you some insights around mentoring. So if we were looking at things from the mentor's perspective, what are the kind of things that they might be doing, running, structuring, and the way the sessions work. So we'll give you some insights into that, so it's not a surprise if you're engaging with mentoring for the first time. We're going to look at a few straightforward models that are going to help us think a little bit more about ourselves, which is a really key piece to underpin the mentoring relationship. And then a couple of practical pieces around sort of the preparation and thinking very much up front about what we want to get from the session. So as we know, it's being recorded, so it will be available to you shortly afterwards. But I'd encourage you, please do make your own notes as you go throughout, because different points of the session will be more relevant or more pertinent depending on where you are within your own journey as a mentee. Some exercises we are going to use the chat facility, so it's a really great way virtually for us to get a sense and share some of the views and things that are in the room. So that is our plan for just under the next hour and a half. So I thought we'd start by thinking about being a great mentee. And we're going to look a little bit about the sort of the purpose of mentoring and how it can be such a really helpful way to support not just career development, but also your own personal development as self. And as I said, we'll look at some insights and some structure around that mentoring process. But importantly, thinking about how we can influence our own mentoring sessions to achieve the goals that you will set for yourself, or you may have set for yourself already, so we can absolutely lead to success. And at the end of the call, there'll be some opportunities. We'll open up for some questions. And perhaps if you've been a great mentee, or you are one now, if there's any other experiences that we haven't covered in the session today, it would be really fantastic to hear from you, because as we'll see when we think about the concept of mentoring, it's such a powerful way to support development. And I'm sure that if we just took a moment to think about our journey in our own careers, and somebody that may have had a big impact on our career and how we've been able to make that career grow. And it doesn't mean mean in a formal context. It could be somebody that's had that impact on you. It can be a role model, you know, potentially his approach you've kind of built on and emulated, but it can be perhaps in a more formal situation as well. So the great thing about mentoring is it can happen every single day, very subtly. But what we're going to talk about today is mentoring in the context of that formal relationship. And we've already heard from Laura that there is a really great platform that we have available to us as members of Meet Business Women, where we can access that formal mentoring process. Now, not that I'm biased about mentoring, and I've been working with mentoring for many years now, but it's just so great for development. And if any of you have been mentors and or you've been mentoring, I hope that you feel that as passionately about that, because mentors can be there for long term. They can be there for the short, the medium term. And we probably think about the classic case of, you know, we help somebody integrate into a new role, into a business. Many organizations have mentoring schemes for their apprentices, graduates, or someone studying for a qualification. You know, we could use them for working better with others, for developing our communication, developing our understanding and the language and the way that our particular industry works. So I guess what I'm saying in summary is the list is endless of the things that you can achieve through mentoring. And I have a mentor currently. I've tried to make that a really important part of my career. And what I do with them is I meet them every month and I ask them to really challenge my thinking around things that I'm going to do, and act as a soundboard, because I like to talk things through. And as I talk things through, more ideas pop into my head. So I find it really, really helpful. And I think that's been a really important part of enabling me to, whatever stage you are at your career, to keep that development, that focus, because we can always be improving all of the time. And it should be such a rewarding experience, not just as a mentee, for, you know, for us as mentees, but also it should be hugely rewarding for mentors as well. And I've seen it over the years transform people's confidence, their performance, and the contribution that they make. So hopefully you'll get a sense as we go through that it is something that I personally feel very passionate about. So I hope I will have some stories and some experiences to share with you that will support you in becoming a really great mentee.
Nicky, could I just interject for a second? For some reason, probably because I'm not a Teams expert at all, which people will realise, some folks had logged on to the mentoring link from Tuesday rather than the mentee link. So we've just had a few more join us. So apologies, Rebecca. Thank you so much for emailing, say you're having a problem. I'm thinking we've captured everyone now. So we've just had a few more extras drop in just to let you know.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And one of the thank you for explaining that, because one of the challenges is, I know anybody that uses Teams, once you go into presentation mode, you can't see anything else that's going on in the room, which is one of the unfortunate challenges. So so if anybody has just joined, very welcome. If you want to catch up in terms of the intro bit, you'll be able to pick that up from the recording that we've got going on. But you've joined at a really good time, because I thought we'd start by thinking about the big why. What is our motivation, our real motivation for wanting to be mentored? So I'd like just to give you a little bit of reflection time now, just to think about that particular question. So what is your motivation for being mentored? Just perhaps run that over in your head. It's really helpful in this session if you've got a pen and a piece of paper that you can do some jotting things down on. If you're comfortable to share why you want to be mentored and what your motivation is, it would be fantastic if you could drop that into the chat, just so that we can have a sense there. But please don't feel pressured for you to do that. But we'll give you a minute now to reflect on that question and to drop and add some things into chat. Great, excellent, Emma. Yeah, improving performance, really, really key. And that is certainly something that mentoring can help with. If anybody else is happy to share, please drop your answers in. Don't worry if they sound similar. Yeah, absolutely. So utilising some expertise from somebody that's got some experience, absolutely. Okay, so any other thoughts then on our big why, our real motivation for being mentored? Yeah, great. Thanks, Phoebe. So getting into situations, help and support that's not necessarily directly involved within our line management structure. Yeah, and tapping into those pockets of knowledge and expertise in other areas. Yeah, learning new things. And I'm glad you've said learning, because we're going to talk a lot about that today. Yeah, improving my strategy to achieve goals. Fantastic. So I think everybody is completely on the right track around what mentoring can be there to support you with. And we'll look at some more examples as we go through the session. Yeah, and I can see somebody there, upskilling yourself. Absolutely, because we'll talk a lot about mentoring being grounded in learning. Now, I'm going to just start with a word of warning. Not that I want to put everybody off, but you have access to some fantastic mentors through the Meet Businesswomen portal. And some of those mentors, may be working with competitor businesses. So just to sort of mention this at the beginning, so we can get this out of the way. And I won't promise you, I won't mention any of the legal things again, but obviously we just need to be very mindful of things around antitrust and anti-competitive law and practice. So we just need to be mindful as we step into that process, depending on who we're matched with as a mentor. It absolutely is not a reason not to do it, but we just need to be mindful of there. And if there's anything that you're unsure about from those two areas, we just recommend that you seek some guidance from your own company if you're unsure. So we'll move swiftly on from the legal things, and we'll start thinking a little bit about learning anew. And as we said, mentoring is grounded in learning. And if there's no learning, it's not mentoring. So really great to see that all of the comments you've put into chat are very much focused around learning, developing, improving, building your skills. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today looking at how you like to learn, and then why this is going to be important in that process of mentoring. And then towards the end, we'll think about what you can share with your mentors to help your mentors be really effective and be the best version that they can be for you. So hopefully I will use this cartoon here because it explains it hopefully much more brilliantly than I would do in terms of description. But we're just going to start by thinking a little bit about our own learning styles and preferences, and then how we make our learning stick within the mentoring. Because what we don't want to do is then take a lot of ideas and thinking, take that away, and then that doesn't become part of what we then build within our skill sets. And I'm sure many of you on the call today, particularly if you're working within HR roles, will be well familiar with some learning theory. But I'm going to simplify it today. And if you've not looked at this before, don't worry too much. There's no test at the end. You don't need to remember all of the things that we're going to share with you. But I'd just like you to think about this in the context of you. And what we can see on the screen is a summary of some research that took place back in 1986 by Honey and Mumford and Learning Styles Questionnaire. So that might ring some bells with you. And what they looked at was if everybody was in a room going through the same learning experience, why was it that some people reacted and took on or retained information than others? Now, it's nothing to do with our academic capabilities. It's about our preferences and the way that we like to learn. So for some of us, we learn best by just getting stuck in, by jumping straight in. As you can see, our activists learning to swim, just jumping in the pool. Now, obviously, it's a very active style. It gets your confidence building up really quickly. And obviously, there can be some pitfalls around that because there are things sometimes that you have to learn and practice in the background. We may have a preference for what we call a theorist. So some of us may like to understand and learn all of the background before we do things. So we might like to read up on what's the best way to do something. Or we may need to look at, a manual for a new machine in terms of how we operate that before we have a go. So it's a more passive, less active style of learning. And then we have our pragmatist approach. So if you have this preference to your own style, you quite like to take things in a step-by-step way. You quite like to test things out. So it might be that you've looked at something, this is what we need to do to deliver this, and then you can step-by-step take that approach, testing things out. And then finally, for some of us in the room, we may have a preference for the reflector learning style. So we learn best by observing the way that other people approach things. And again, it's a more passive style, but there's an awful lot going on inside the head because we're working out then, when I do that, how am I going to do? Now, in its very simplest form, we may find that we resonate with maybe one or two of these approaches. And it's quite useful, and I'll give you an opportunity a bit later to reflect on this and how we like to learn, because this can really underpin and transform the way that the mentoring relationship can work. So just have another look at the screen. Which of those one or two probably do you resonate with best? Don't worry about having to remember all the labels and the names. It's just more important that you can describe the way in which you like to learn. Now, we're going to share you with another quick theory here. And this is around a learning cycle. So don't worry, if you're not in HR, we're not going to do too many theories today, but I just thought we'd start with this just to kind of stimulate some of our thinking. And around about the same time that the activist theorist, pragmatist, reflective research was going on, there was another piece of research that looked at this learning cycle. And what this research said was for learning to stick and become part of us, we need to go through these 4 stages. We must have an experience. We must reflect. We must abstract and conceptualize that reflection, and we must test things out. So if we think about what we can see on the screen in those 2 models, hopefully we can draw some really simple conclusions. So both models have 4 cycles, which is fantastic. And there is definitely some similarity between the types of learning styles and that cycle. Now, why is this important in making you a really great mentor and understanding what's happened? Well, we'll give you some insight now into what the mentors are trained with. And mentors are trained to help you work around that learning cycle. So for some of us, if we have a very strong preference for reflective learning, the natural tendency might be to go, well, actually, I've seen somebody else do that, so I've got it. I've got it and I know what I'm doing now, job done. But what we know is that the only way we're going to continually build those skills and make that part of our repertoire without feeling scary while we do it is to go around that cycle. So it's really useful to help your mentors understand what your level of entry point is to that cycle. Because if you're the kind of person that's that activist approach, you love jumping in and giving it a go, your mentor is going to help you reflect. If you like to reflect and think about the theory, your mentor is going to encourage you to find ways to test things out and get the experience so that you can do that. So that's just a little insight really into what mentors are going to be there to help you with. And if you can hold that thought around perhaps where you feel you might be, because we are going to come back to that in a little while in the session. And we're only going to be really effective if we push ourselves around that cycle. And I'll talk a little bit about our comfort zones in a minute, and how we can recognize some of those. So the next piece, which I'm sure is a model and approach that I know many of you will be familiar with. And if we think about when we're learning something new, we tend to go through these 4 stages. And again, our mentors are there to help pull out the best tools and the best approaches for you, depending on what other stage you are. So for example, if I took myself and my mentoring goal was around being able to deliver team huddles and team briefing, and I'd never done it before, I'm going to be at that very first stage. I'm going to have that, what we call that unconscious incompetence. I'm not really going to be aware of it. And what the mentor's role in at that point is to think about who they can help me get feedback from. The mentor is there to help put in examples and stories and experiences to help me be able to build up and test out and use and grow my confidence with there. So they might use models that we'll look at in a minute called Johari window. And I'll talk you through that because that's a really useful model that you can use yourself, even within or without the mentoring. But if we move on to the second step, so the conscious incompetence stage, this is where the mentor's role is to help us perhaps learn from mistakes, because we're not going to get things perfectly 100% right every single time. And actually being able to learn from the things that we don't do as well is as key as learning from the things that we do well. So mentors will be asking lots of questions to you to kind of deepen your thinking. They might be also sharing more resources and knowledge to help build your awareness up. And as you build your confidence with those new skills that you're gaining, we're going to move up to that third step on the model. And again, this is where the mentor is there to help you find more opportunities to practice, because just doing it once is not going to be enough to cement it. And they could be quite challenging to get you thinking about taking your learning and your thinking even deeper. And then when you've got it and you feel really confident with it, then you move up to that skilled stage. But the mentor's role doesn't just stop there, because what their job is there is to help you reflect on your practice so that you can really facilitate continuous improvement around your skill sets. And importantly, as we know when we get there, they make sure that, you know, we don't get complacent with the way that we work. So their role doesn't just stop there. It's about asking lots of questions. So I hope that gives you a little insight into different stages and different roles that your mentors will play within your learning. And you being aware of which stage you are can make you a really great mentee, because you can be going in proactively, talking to your mentor about where you feel you are on this model and how you feel that your mentor can best support you get to that next stage and keep moving. So one more, almost one more model that we'll introduce you to. And this one that I really, really love personally. I use this one quite a lot, but it's called the Johari window. And I'll give you some resources at the end where you can go online and complete a really simple assessment around your Hari window and be able to plot where you are on this model. But for those of you that haven't come across it before, it's a really simple way of looking about what you know about yourself and then what you also share with other people. And if we look at that box one, the arena, in that box is what I know about myself and then what is known about me to other people. So it's our public area. But the really important piece for the mentoring process is helping you with box two. Because quite often, if we may not be aware of the impact that we're having on certain things, you know, people may experience us in particular ways, but we don't understand the effect that we're going to have, and that's our blind spot. And it can be a really useful model in putting in you know, feedback and examples where you get some information and feedback from somebody else. So your mentor's role can help you to talk about that blind spot. Maybe you've been given some feedback and you don't quite understand the feedback that you've been given. Really great question to ask yourself is, I wonder if that's my blind spot and I just can't see that. Because the more we can build our self-awareness, the better and better and greater we will become as a mentee. And your mentor might also encourage you to get feedback from people that you work with that can help to expand or help to shrink that blind spot area for you. Touching very briefly on box three. So this is about what you keep private from others. And I'm going to share with you a little bit later a quote from a lady called Brené Brown. If you haven't come across her before, she is really inspiring. She does so much great work about authenticity in leadership and looking at courage and how we can use courage within the workplace. And the more that we can disclose and be open with others about, the bigger that arena comes. So it might be talking to, for example, to your mentor about what really is the crux of why we find something really difficult to do. And when you're doing that, you're reducing that hidden area. Because what we want to achieve for you through your mentoring is that we pull all of those areas back and we move into box four, which are things that we don't know. It's perhaps hidden talent, it's our hidden skills, it's our potential that we need to unlock. So really, really helpful model in mentoring. You can start to use that model yourself. You don't have to wait for a mentor to use it, but do go online and have a look at the further reading and the tests and assessments on there, because it really can help to transform where you are, and it can make us be more open to any of the feedback that we receive. So my last model before we step into some bit more about mentoring is just to think a little bit about comfort zones. Because if we want to be great mentees, we need to step out of our comfort zones and we need to be really curious. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice or encouragement that I can share with you to get the most out of your mentoring relationship. And really asking thought-provoking questions of your mentors, you know, reflecting time, thinking about, you know, where can you take this? What can you do? But you will need at some point to explore those possibilities of doing things that might scare you a little bit. But that's a good thing, because actually feeling a little bit like that, we know that our comfort zones are being stretched, and we know that when our comfort zones are stretched, development begins to take place because we're stepping into something new. But what we need to look at, and your mentor can help you with, is, you know, how do you turn that fear into excitement and some enthusiasm about what you're going to do? And that's exactly what a mentoring relationship is for. You know, and your mentor is there to help you find the answers to the questions that are going to dispel the things that perhaps sit in the fear box at the moment in terms of moving forward. So I guess kind of in summary, It's okay to feel a little anxious. It's okay to feel a little bit fearful sometimes about stepping into something new. But if we think about that Johari window model, actually sharing that fear and being open with our mentors, they can help us to think that through and build up those steps of confidence in terms of what we do. The danger zone, though, is if we choose to stay in our comfort zone where it feels safe and we feel in control and we don't want to do anything different, development and learning doesn't take place. But I know that's not going to happen to anybody on the call here, because I know we're all here because we're really keen and passionate about building our careers. So I said I'd share with you a quote from a lady called Brené Brown. And a lot of Brené Brown's work, as I said, if you haven't come across it, she looks a lot around vulnerability. But when she talks about that, she really helps you understand and believe that that is not a weakness. And sometimes when people step into a mentoring relationship for the first time, can feel a little bit vulnerable because we're having to open up about perhaps the things that we're not so great at and the things that we want to improve. And it's so important that we don't see that as a weakness, but actually we see that and look at that with courage, because not everybody can do that. So it's fantastic that everybody here wants to engage with mentoring. But if you haven't seen Brené Brown's work, do Google her, do look at it. There's loads of fantastic, inspiring work that I think is really helpful. But let's now step back from all the models and the thinking and the theory and start thinking about you in the room. And the key to getting the most from your mentoring is that you are really super clear on the needs that you have from the outset. And as you can see from the snip on the screen, part of engaging with the Meet Businesswomen portal is that you need to commit to the areas that you are looking to be supported by with a mentor. So telling your mentor exactly what you want to get out of the relationship is absolutely critical. And we need to really think about, what are those goals that we have in mind? What are the things that we want to help us to progress and succeed with? And we have to think about that in quite a specific way, because we've talked a lot about we want a mentor to develop my skills, to support my career. But it's really worth us thinking about that in a bit more detail and being as specific as we can.
To go for break.
Oh, hello. Sorry, was that somebody just come off mute or was on mute? I can't see from the screen, so if there's a question that you have, please feel free to interrupt and to shout that one out. So if we just think then about our goals, and I'll give you an example. If I had a goal that said, I want to improve my communication skills. It's a bit vague, it's a bit non-specific. Communication is an enormous area, and I need to think about, what is it about my communication skills that I need to improve? So we kind of need to start big, like a funnel, and then bring ourselves in. So we are going to have a short activity now, which is going to give you some reflection time to think about what it is that you want a mentor to help you achieve, but in some very specific detail. So what would be the 2 or 3 things, if you're going to sign up to the Meet Businesswomen Mentoring portal, that you're going to be looking for that you can do in there? And we are going to take this activity. So what we're going to ask you to do is reflect on that, hone those skills, write down those goals in a really clear, outcome-focused way. If anybody then, when we come back from the activity, is comfortable to share, we will have a look at those goals. But please, by no means, there is no pressure to share those goals, because that is something that's very personal to you. We are finishing the session at 1. So what we're going to do while we do this activity, we're going to give you 10 minutes. So if you do want to use that opportunity as well, just to grab yourself a quick drink or stretch your legs, please feel free. We're going to meet back at 12:21. So reflection time on your goals, grab yourself a quick drink, and then we'll come back and look a little bit about how that fits into the mentoring structure. So see you soon. First of all, hope that you've been able to spend some quality time reflecting on your goals and not just stepping into lots of emails, which we know is the tendency that we want to do. So is there anybody willing to share a couple of their shaped goals through the chat facility? But again, please don't feel pressured. It is something that's very personal to you. But if anybody does want to do that, it would be great to, we can see some examples in terms of where we go. Great, we can see some coming into the chat now. Okay, we'll just give that a moment. And thank you, those of you that are typing away. I'm very grateful that you are sharing. Yeah, so making that transition from manager to leader. So again, it's much more specific around what we can do. Fantastic, Phoebe. Yeah, really, really clear, really specific. And that's going to be a really easy thing to then work on there. Yeah. Yeah, and developing those management skills. And I think if we think about perhaps people skills is quite broad. So were there anything specifically within there that would help us to be more succinct in terms of the communication? Yeah, how to stay motivated. I like that one. It's a really good one, especially on a Friday. Good. So great that you've been able to give that thought to your skills. Yeah, addressing difficult conversation, Charlotte, and I think that's a key one that we see come up lots of times around the mentoring process. But the more specific that you can be, the better the match to the mentor, because it will be matched against your expertise within there. But also it helps you to measure your progress. And one tip that we would give you as a mentee is to look at your goal and think on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing that already? So if, for example, we've got a transition from, we use Emma's example, manager to leader, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? You might be a 3 out of 10 already on that journey. And it's really useful for you to give a score, doesn't matter how low it is, at the start of your mentoring journey. Because with your mentoring, it can be 6 months, it could be longer. And it's really useful perhaps every other session that you go to, you look at those goals and think, where am I now? Because what you want to be seeing is that you've got some progression. And whether you go from a 3 to a 4, or a 4 to a 5, or a 1 to a 2, that's irrespective. It's about making sure that we've got movement. So that's a great check that you can do. And it's also a really good, simple thing that you can share with your mentors. So do keep in mind, clarity, simplicity around your goals is really key. And that's what's going to help you get the good match and be able to see the very significant progress that you will make. So let's just give you a little bit more insight into what happens in a mentoring session. Now, those of you who may have been on the session previously, you will know that I do like a good flip chart, and it's been very painful not having to work in a room with lots of flip charts. So I made one of our own just to be able to do the process for you. And the reason that I'm going to share this with you is so that when you turn up to a mentoring session, all we want you to do is remember that squiggly line moving up, because normally a mentoring session will take around about an hour. But don't worry if it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes and you've done, that's absolutely fine. It, was within your gift to say, actually, I think we've covered everything that we need to do now. So that's fine. So don't feel too pressured about the time. It's just there as a guide. But mentors' time is as precious as yours as well. So again, a good thing for you both to be working on is keeping that time management element to your session. So try not to make it go beyond that hour unless you've expressly agreed it will before. Mentors don't generally jump into a session and go, right then, tell me what you want to work on today. What their role there is to do is to gently ease you into the session. So do expect a little bit of small talk to go on. Please do be open around the role that you're doing, or perhaps how the week's gone, or whatever you've disclosed to your mentor that you're happy to talk about. But what they will ask you every session is what do you want to use the session for today? So preparation, planning, thinking is really key. And being a great mentee means that you will turn up with a plan of what you want to look at today. So expect that question to come out every single time. And what the mentor will also do is ask you how you have got on with your action plan. Because at the end of the session, you're going to work with your mentors around agreeing maybe 1 or 2 things that you're going to go away and work on and implement between the end of the session. So that tops and tails your session, but the big part of it is what we call the facilitation. And that's where you present the goal to your mentor, and your mentor's role is to structure a conversation with you using a combination of skills to help you explore that area and explore that topic, and to help you identify some solutions to that area and help you through that action planning process. So all we need to remember from that is the squiggly line, 3 stages, going to ask you goals and review, going to facilitate, and there's going to be some actions at the end, but we'll give you some insight into what some mentors might do in a moment. So we are now, can I just check whether this is the slide moved on? Could anybody let me know?
Yes, it has.
Sorry, yes. Apologies, it seems to be lagging a little bit my end. I think my laptop's given out for a Friday. But I wanted to share this slide with you because when we think about the facilitation part of the session, mentors will use a combination of coaching and mentoring skills. And they will do that on what we call a continuum. Now, with mentoring, if we took pure mentoring, and it's very simplest form, it just means pouring in or passing on experiences. So if it's not something that you've encountered before, it's pure mentoring because it's about pushing in information. If we jump to the other side of the model, this is about actually you've got things in your head, you've got ideas, experiences. It's about pulling out, therefore it's pure coaching. So pure mentoring, pushing in, pure coaching, pushing out. And the most effective mentoring sessions will be a combination of using both of those skills, but sometimes it might just be coaching. Okay, so it will be around the asking questions of facilitation. And the reason that we encourage mentors to coach as part of their session is that sometimes what the mentor's done in their own world and in their own way and in their own experience is not going to be relevant for you. It's not the same blueprint that you need, although they may have some expertise and some experience that they want to share. So just think about that model. And again, a good thing to become aware of is when you're meeting your mentors, just clock in your mind, are they mentoring me? Oh, they're now coaching me, they're mentoring me, they're now coaching me, because that will help with your awareness and familiarity of the process. But the reason we encourage mentors to coach you is that enables you to build perhaps upon some ideas they've shared, and then to think about your own plan and your own way forward. And that's really key because that helps you with confidence. It helps you with taking ownership for the areas that you're working on. And just to make sure that we've got something that's really clear for you, apologies, my screen has just frozen again. So I'm going to, apologies, we've got some technical issues. I'm just going to come off sharing a minute. I don't quite know. I've definitely got the gremlins in there today. Just bear with me a second.
Don't worry at all. It always happens on a Friday, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. Now I've got something very strange going on with my screen.
I think there's been a Teams update as well this week. I've been in a couple of meetings this week where Teams has gone a bit haywire with screen sharing.
Yeah, let's try. Let's try it. Right. Okay. Right. Can we see slides?
Yes, we can see a full
Excellent.
slide, and we're on back to slide 15, mentoring goals.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Right, hopefully this has resolved it. Maybe I've got some update going on in the background that's slowing things down. Right, for the second time, we should be back on track. So if we think about that continuum, so we said a mentor is going to seamlessly move you between coaching and mentoring. Just to give you some insights, if you are being purely mentored, these are some things and some clues that you might hear mentors say. So they are giving you opportunities to kind of sprinkle in, if you like, their experience and their skills. They may help you alert to some watch outs, but this is where you can see they may be kind of sort of pushing some information in or getting you to think about some different options and ideas. And then if we think about moving across to that coaching piece, then again, these are some examples of questions that you might experience when you're in that coaching session. And it's really good practice, again, for our own development to become very self-aware of, I'm now being coached, I'm now being mentored. Because if you go on to be mentored yourself or mentors yourself, then it's a really easy way to observe and to learn some of those skills. And when you're being mentored, don't be worried about silence, because often people say, what if I can't think of an answer to a question that I'm being asked, or makes me feel a bit pressured? Just sit back and relax. And if you're asked something and you think, yeah, I need to think about this, just let your mentor know and say, actually, can I just take a couple of moments to think about this or reflect on this question? Because it's something I need to do, so, some more thinking about, because you're in control. Okay, so your mentors manage the process, but you are in control of your mentoring. So sometimes what you want to do is leave your mentoring sessions with questions whizzing round in your head that keep you thinking over and over again. But don't feel concerned. And silence for you might feel much longer than it feels for the mentor. So really don't worry about that. But if they start to move into areas where they get you thinking about other things, it's because they're drawing on their expertise and experience to try to give you the best learning experience. So again, let's go back to that squiggly line in our head of the structure of the process. And we said that we would then, right at the end of the session, really key that we get some actions, because you hopefully will have come up with lots of ideas because the mentors asked you some great questions to stimulate your thinking. But part of that wrap-up process is about giving you some time to reflect on the session and your learning and what it is that you've done. Some mentors may give you a formal reflection time in the session. They may say to you, please take 5 or 10 minutes to reflect on the session, make up some notes and to share those with your mentors. Other mentors may not. But if they don't do that, it's really good practice for you, and it will help you to become a really great mentee. And if you know tips and things such as mind mapping, really good to sit there and mind map your session. Don't worry about making lots and lots of notes throughout. Try to develop your reflective practice. What did you cover? What were the good questions asked? What are you thinking about? What are your actions, and what is it that you're going to do? And sometimes mentors will ask you questions. They might say, that is a fantastic action, Laura. How confident are you that you're going to be able to achieve that out of 10? And you might go, maybe 7 out of 10. Expect your mentors to go, what's going to make it a 10? So the more open you can be within the sessions about perhaps the things that you feel more concerned about or are going to push your comfort zones a little bit more to do that. Every time you step into a new mentoring session, I'd really encourage you to get your notes out and have a read through, because it then puts you back in. You immediately go back into where you were within that session and what you can do. So keeping notes is a really great thing to do when you are going through that mentoring process. And sometimes your mentors might encourage you to use those notes to create a timeline or a journey of your mentoring. And if you're a particularly creative person, again, that can be something that can bring a different dimension to your mentoring. Grab a sheet of A3 paper and, create that learning pathway or roadmap about what you've learned. Because when you get to the end of that process and you're perhaps sharing with your mentor or others about your experience, it's a really nice thing to be able to look back on and remind you of that journey that you've been through as well. So let's think about then what's really important for your mentor to know about you. And mainly in the very first time you meet your mentor, yes, they want to know about your goals and what you want to achieve, but the most important thing they want to know about is you. So as much as you can share really helps to set that scene, because mentoring is grounded in a connection as well as learning. So it's really key that you set yourselves up to build that rapport, to build that trusted relationship as soon as you can. And the earlier that you can do that, and the earlier it feels a connection, the more impactful your mentoring will be much earlier on in the process. So I put some questions on there. These are questions that if you perhaps want to write some of those themes down, they can really help you to shape what you want to tell your mentor when you first meet up. Now, we talked a lot at the beginning about learning, and I said we'd come back to that piece. So hopefully that part of the session has helped you to understand a bit more about how you best like to learn. What do you like? What do you find easy? What approaches? Which bits of the learning cycle are a bit more tricky that you might need to ask your mentor to really nurture and support you around? And if we look at the question on there that says, what style of mentoring would help you best? Because mentors can demonstrate any style. They can be challenging, they can be demanding, but at the other end of the spectrum, they can be nurturing and supportive and show patience. So have a real think about what is the best style that's going to be the best for you? What is it that the mentor can do? And it's really helpful to set that up to be a great relationship if you can be honest and talk about what you think is going to help you best. So when I go into a new mentor relationship, one of the things I always ask my mentors is, I'd like you to be really challenging with me and ask me really tough and challenging questions, because that's what really helps me. So if I didn't communicate that at the beginning, they might take a different approach, which then I would feel a bit more frustrated with, and then it wouldn't be the best connection and the best mentoring relationship. Great to think about your career journey, but don't just talk about I did this and I did this and I did this. What have you learned along the way? What have you been most proud of? What's been the most standout thing that's happened to you in your career? Because that can be really insightful to your mentor and help them understand. And I think a really important question, because you're all working in different organizations and you all have different organizational values that you need to be demonstrating while you're working. So great thing to do to make it a fantastic experience and benefit for you is to share some of those values with your mentor and ask them to keep you within those guidelines and tramlines when you're working on your action plans. But you could also think about how you shape up against them. Is there anything around your organization values that your mentor could help you support you with here? So do keep extra things at the back of the mind. So it's not always just about the goals, it's the context in which we have to apply the goals. And organizations will have really different sets of values. So it's really important that you help them to understand that, so you stay true to your own organization. And I think a really key thing and a benefit around the Meet Business Women is, what do you love about working in our industry? For me, it's that fast-paced, ever-changing piece. That really excites me. But yes, there are things also that we find challenging. So thinking about those sorts of things and sharing that with a mentor, because we've got an industry mentoring group here. And I think it's also about, there are unique things about the way that we work in our industry too. That's not an exhaustive list of questions, because there may be lots of other things that you'd like to share with your mentor, and certainly your mentors will have things that they can share with you. But what I've done over the year, working with lots of mentors and training lots of mentors, is I quite often ask them, what's great about mentoring and what isn't great about mentoring for you? And I thought I'd share 3 good and 3 bad with you next, because if we perhaps take some consideration and learning from what we're going to see on the screen, these are things that can help us be a great mentee. And I think I've heard so many times this first one, it's so frustrating when my mentee talks the talk and doesn't put anything into action, because mentors are giving up their time and often a lot of energy and passion, and they really care about development, so they don't see it happening. You know, mentees cancel meetings at the last minute. I know that happens from time to time. But I think where mentees have got frustrated is when it becomes a pattern, because it makes them question how committed we are to development. And mentees expecting the mentor to do all the answers for everybody on there. But don't be disheartened by that, because for all of the things that they find challenging, there are lots of things that they find really inspiring that we can take learning with. We talked about this already. You know, my mentee's great. She turns up with a plan of what she wants to cover the session to work on, gets a big tick. Seeing someone develop is inspiring, and that's why mentors do the role that they do. But the mentee talking through what they've implemented between sessions, you know, that makes the mentors feel really engaged in your process. And I really like this last one. I've only heard a couple of times be used, but my mentee always asks me if there is anything she can do to help me at the end of each session. And I think, you know, it says there, it's so refreshing. I think that's really refreshing. And remember, mentoring is as much a learning opportunity for the mentor as it is for us as mentees. So I hope there's some things in there that can act as some good tracks around what we do. But let's think about what is going to make you a great mentee. And we've thought lots of things, and we've given you lots of things as we've gone through the session, because if we said if learning doesn't take place, and where's your learning, it's not mentoring. So an absolute key one is around, you will be a standout talked about mentee if you show that real ownership for your own development. And your mentor is not there to do the work for you. They're there to help you do your work better, or build your career in a more structured way. So putting all the skills that you've worked on into use every day is really key, and sharing that with them. And I think as well, if we think about other things that come up, there's lots of things on here. I quite like the one about being curious. And being really curious will make you a great mentee, because it shows that you're hungry to learn and improve and grow. And that way you can make the relationship really balanced with your mentor. Have a debate, ask tough questions back in terms of where you go. And I also wanted to say that you should feel empowered within your mentoring sessions. And sometimes when people have gone into a mentoring relationship for the first time, they feel a bit anxious or a bit concerned. And, I'm working with somebody that's got so much experience, and we shouldn't feel fazed by that. We should feel empowered to draw what we need to draw and make the most ourselves of those sessions. So we shouldn't feel in any way inadequate in the relationship, and it's that empowerment mindset that we want to have. And I've called out on there as well, give feedback to your mentor. Feel empowered to give that feedback. If they've done something and it hasn't worked, talk about it. If they've done something that's been fantastic and it's unlocked your thinking, give them the feedback and tell them to do more of it as well. So you make it more of a two-way process. And I put some others ideas up here as well. And these are things, again, where I feel that there'll be some standard things, but some things on there that will be really, really stand out, and don't be afraid to challenge, because this is an opportunity for you, and it's an opportunity that you can use to really shape what you're doing. So just as we begin to sort of draw to a close and open up for some questions, if we think about mentoring, as we said before, is grounded in learning. So you have a really fantastic opportunity when you engage in mentoring to start thinking about how can I enrich my learning journey and tap into lots of other resources as well. So bit of a favourite from mine. So if anybody's on here from Moy Park, apologies. But we do like a good book. But as you're going through mentoring and you've clarified your goals, then what else is out there that you can read or engage with that you could potentially bring into your mentoring sessions? Your mentors will have resources and recommendations they can share with you, but it's really great to have a look at your own. And it's around, if we're building industry knowledge. And I've just taken some, obviously Moy Park has a book about chickens and broiler meat in our library, but there may be things specific to your industry that you want to pick up, but use this as an opportunity to do that. Your mentor may work with you over different chapters of a book. You might read something really inspiring that you want to share with your mentor as well, but ask them if there's anything that they recommend that can support your development while you're going through that journey. And a website that we shared with on the mentor call last week, if you haven't come across it before, is called businessballs.com. It's brilliant. There's loads of resources, loads of quizzes, questionnaires. Remember, we meant Johari Window. If you go onto there, you can find the Johari Window questionnaire as well. Really easy website to remember the name of. Loads of things on there. But again, have a look, experiment, try different things out, and bring that to your mentoring. And another thing that is, we certainly beginning to use this a lot more at Moy Park, is around the use of coaching cards. And again, if you have any within your organisations, you may be able to borrow them, but they are fairly cheap to get online. And these are sets of cards that you can work on to improve emotional social intelligence. They've got lots of cards around presentations, developing teams, leadership, and they're just a really fun and different way to think about your learning. So again, if it's not something you've looked at, have a look at. There's lots of really good products on the market there. Don't worry, we're not on a commission for anything. There's lots of different brands that you can gain on there. But again, that can be something you can work on with your mentor as well. And remember things around TED Talks, I'm sure many of you will be familiar around. But if you watch something that's great, share it with your mentor and other team members. But as I said, don't just focus on the mentoring process itself. Try to make it a really rich learning experience for you. And then just wanted to finally give you a 1 or 2 minutes around reflecting on the session. So of all of the things that we've talked about around understanding and building our self-awareness through Johari Window, understanding our learning styles, gaining some insight into the process that mentors will take with us, and also then thinking about those practicalities that are going to make us a really great mentee, just take a moment to think about what is it that you will commit to that will ensure that you are the best mentee that you can be. And I really like this quote from Abraham Lincoln, because commitment is what transforms a promise into reality. And it's really good practice, if we're going to make a commitment, that we write that down somewhere so that we can refer back to it. So I'm going to give you a minute to have a think about that question, to write down your commitment. If you want to share it into chat, please share it into chat, and then we'll open up for some questions before Laura does a wrap up at the end. Okay, so we'll give you 30 more seconds just to think about it, and then we'll open up for questions. Great, thank you, Charlotte. I think that's great, building that reflection time in and some research, really key. Okay, if anybody wants to pop anything else into chat, please feel free. Oh, like that, Phoebe, come prepared with questions and queries and thoughts. Absolutely, that will absolutely make you the best if you come prepared. It's so key, one of the key things that mentors talk about a lot. So let's come off screen. I think we've got some time for, yeah, proper time before, during and after the session, which is great. So if you want to add anything in, please feel free. But we're now going to open up if there are any questions or any experiences that anybody else on the call has got about mentoring that you feel would benefit everybody else. So now's the time not to be shy if you have any questions, and no question is a silly question ever. Or you're all thinking it's Friday and I want my lunch, which I wouldn't blame you on.
Hi, Nikki. I'm doing the mentoring at the moment, and it's been. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a bit quiet.
All right.
Oh.
Is that better?
Yeah, I'll move in a little bit. Might look a bit weird, but I'll try to catch you.
So I'm doing the mentoring at the moment, and it has been really good. But I think doing this session will definitely make me a better mentee. Maybe if this recording you had to watch before you could apply to be a mentee, because I could have been probably a lot better mentee having known this knowledge beforehand. There's definitely some good action points I'll take from this for my future ones. I've got one in a few weeks. Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And Laura, is there anything you want to comment on that?
I think it's a brilliant idea, yeah, definitely. And because, as I said at sort of the beginning of the session, this is so new to us that we only started in February and we're just learning as we go. And the platform that we're using at the moment has a load of resources on there. And Nikki and I were just chatting just before the session that we probably need to have clearer instructions, both about how long the relationship can last and what's required out of each party. And I think, and I suppose back to the learning styles, definitely for me, I much prefer watching a video than reading documents. So yeah, we can signpost this and get folks to definitely watch it beforehand. And the mentoring one as well, actually, I think that'll for folks to watch both if they've got the time is really powerful, so you know what they are tooled up with and what's expected from the mentees as well.
That's great. Thanks Laura. Thanks Charlotte. Any other questions or ideas from anybody or experiences to share?
My one question is kind of keeping that mentoring and personable relationship separate. Where's the line kind of in there? If there's some, I don't know, a process or how you just kind of keep that separate.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. So I think if you're, it's all about setting out the ground rules around how you want the relationship to start at the beginning. So I think sometimes, you know, you can say these are areas that I feel we can go into, and actually these are things that I'd rather we didn't engage with within the mentoring process. So you set that out as a commitment and you agree with each other that if any of us catches each other coming outside of the tram lines or on track, that either of us can just give a little gentle nudge to make sure that we step into in terms of where we are, and not feeling that we can't call out if things enter there. It depends again whether you're mentoring with somebody that you know particularly well formally. And I think if that's the case and there's a close relationship connection there already, a couple of tips you can think about: mentor in a different place than you normally would. So if you are meeting people face to face, don't just do it in the usual office. book a different meeting room that you don't normally go to, so it feels a different environment. And then you can go there and walk through the door, and mentally in your head, we're now in mentoring mode. That can help to create that separation. And even if you're working virtually, again, put yourself in a different room than you would normally sit on. So it's just disrupting what is the normal into that session. And sometimes you might just have to do a quick pause inside our head preparation to say, this is going to be different and what we do. But if you go into that session and you bam, these are the goals, this is what I need to really work on today, and you take control of it right at the beginning, that can really help. Okay, anything else at all? I'm just conscious we've got a couple of minutes left if there's any time.
I've just got one more question, if I may. If you see someone that you sort of really admire and you think has got the skill set that you could use to develop, is it good to approach someone in that way, or is it better to be allocated a mentor?
If you feel you've got a connection, then go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, is what I say. And if we need to, and if it's an internal mentor, we can, you know, if it's something within, say, MOI, we can look to make sure that we put them through the mentor training process, just so there's consistency in the approach and that we get the right code of conduct piece. But please, by all means, feel free that you can approach anybody to do that. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we've got about half a minute left. I'm going to hand over to Laura to do a wrap up.
Thank you, Nikki. What a brilliant session. Loved it. And I've learned so much, and I'm thinking all this stuff I'm doing wrong as a mentor and a mentee, even basic things like I'm not telling my mentor what learning style I like. I never even considered that. I go in with a massive list of stuff, but I've never top ended it with that. So really useful. Thank you so much. And as you've said, we'll put the recording on the website. And to Charlotte's point, brilliant. We can put it at the front of the mentoring portal as well, so everyone's got all the skills. As ever, if you've got any feedback on today's session and more broadly about Meet Business Women, we're just continuing to grow. We would love your feedback on what you like, what you don't like, and what we should be doing more of. So please do just reach out and let us know.